First of all, I want to take notice of the fact that we have a new electronic voice. I don't think I like it as much as I like the other one, but it doesn't matter. I think this is the voice we're going to have. Welcome to the July meeting of the Dormitory Authority. I want to welcome the members. Thank you all for coming. It's a hot day, and for those of you that are traveling back and forth to Albany, it's got to be unpleasant. Still, the city is beautiful as it always is, even in the rain. Thank you all for being here. I want to thank the guests who are joining us today. We're looking forward to a good meeting, and hopefully not a very long meeting, with a lot of grace. I say that because Member Romsky has to leave at 11:15, and we have some very important business to discuss later on, and I'd like for him to be here for that. So we're going to move as much expedition as possible. We'll go straight to the agenda. We have the minutes of the June 19th meeting. You all have had a chance to review those minutes. Are there any proposed changes, revisions? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve those minutes? Thank you very much, Jerry, for the motion. Wellington, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. We're going to move to the Finance Committee report. Chairman Romsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday afternoon in New York City, we did it at the end, we actually did approve the meeting minutes from the June meeting of the Finance Committee. We also then advanced to discuss the Northwell Health Obligated Group transaction that's on today's calendar, and we unanimously recommend that be approved at today's meeting. We then discussed the TELP matter that's on today. We agree that should also be adopted at today's board meeting, and that concludes my report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Jerry, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Jerry? Good meeting you ran yesterday, sir. Thank you. The third agenda item, the adoption of financing documents and resolutions pertaining thereto. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. Behind tab 3 is the Maimonides Medical Center transaction summary update with bond counsel Doran Barr Yavar of Paris Beach and Sarithia Ray of Lewis Monday, with Gerard Clauser presenting an update. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the transaction summary update and staff report provided to the members seeking the adoption of documents from Maimonides Medical Center. The material updates since the approval of the resolution to proceed received February 6th. Our Maimonides Medical Center has decided to issue fixed rate FHA insured tax exempt bonds. When initially presented for the resolution to proceed, approval was sought for tax exempt FHA or taxable Ginnie Mae bonds, and they're taking the tax exempt route. One significant note here, the seeker review on the transaction summary delivered had an estimated completion date of July 12. We have a final and confirmed completion date of July 15. So the seeker has been addressed. Our resolution to proceed was received on February 6th. The PACB approval was received on February 20, and TEFRA has been completed as well. The staff requests the board adopt the bond documents for the Maimonides Medical Center in an amount not to exceed $165 million. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Gerard. Duran, are you going to offer some comments on the bond counsel letter?
Yes, I'll talk a little bit about it and then turn it over to Sarafi. So before you for your consideration is the adoption of the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York Maimonides Medical Center FHA insured mortgage hospital revenue bond resolution and a series resolution authorizing up to $165 million of Maimonides Medical Center FHA insured mortgage hospital revenue bonds, series of 2019. It's a mouthful. The bond resolution authorizes the authority to issue bonds from time to time, each of which will be secured by a mortgage insured by FHA pursuant to sections 242, 241, 232, 223F, or 223A7 of the National Housing Act. If this sounds a little bit unusual, you haven't done one of these in 10 years. So a little refresher probably is in order. The series 2019 bonds will be issued in accordance with the bond resolution, and this is a new bond resolution. This will be the first series of bonds issued under it. And as with all of your bond resolutions, there's a pledge of, in this case, trust revenues that consist primarily of payments made by Maimonides under the note and the loan agreement. Maimonides is a not-for-profit hospital in Brooklyn, and it intends to use the proceeds of the bonds together with its own equity to finance a variety of renovation and construction projects, as well as acquiring an updated information system and medical equipment, fund a debt service reserve fund, and pay capitalized interest and cost of issuance. The bond resolution, which I'll talk about, and I'll turn over the rest to Sarathi. The bond resolution, as all of your bond resolutions, constitute the basic agreement between the authority and Maimonides for all bonds issued under it. And in this case, the series resolution is delegating to various officers of the authority the ability to make certain determinations, provided that they don't exceed certain parameters, which are in this case a maximum principal amount of $165 million, a maximum maturity date of 40 years, a true interest cost of the tax-exempt bonds of 7.5%, and the other customary parameters. I just want to take a moment to talk a little bit about the FHA insurance, since it's a little bit different. So the institution expects to receive a firm commitment from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for FHA mortgage insurance under sections 241 and 242 of the National Housing Act. The institution also expects that the commitment will provide for a cash lock under which, in the event of a default, the HUD agrees to make mortgage insurance benefits or to pay them in the form of cash rather than issuing FHA debentures, which is a completely different way of paying off bonds and is longer, and the whole structure of this is predicated on a cash lock.
Duran, that's called a cash
Lock.
lot.
Lock.
Oh, lock. Oh, thank you. Got it. Thank you.
So, in the event of a default, the authority at the FHA mortgagee would work with the mortgage servicer, I'll talk about in a second, to make application for the FHA mortgage insurance benefits. But these benefits take a while to be processed and paid, and as a result, there's a need to also have certain reserves in the transaction that sort of bridge the point from the default to the point where the mortgage insurance benefits are actually received from HUD. And to aid in that process, I mentioned a mortgage servicer. That will be Bank of America N.A., which is an affiliate of the underwriter. And they're being retained pursuant to administer the mortgage and the note, as well as to supervise the payments of project costs pursuant to the building loan agreement on behalf of the authority. Under the servicing agreement, the mortgage servicer will monitor the collection of all payments due from the institution under the note. The mortgage servicer is responsible for forwarding to the trustee the note payments made by Maimonides after deducting its servicing fee. And that's as much as I think I want to tell you about today about FHA insurance. Sarathi, why don't you talk about the loan agreement? Other matters.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
As Duran noted, the proceeds from the sale of the bonds will be lent by the authority to the institution pursuant to a loan agreement, which in turn will apply those proceeds to the cost of the project. And the loan will be secured by FHA insured mortgage. And the obligations of the institution to make those payments are general obligations of the institution. And they're not out of any illegally available monies. And those monies are not subject to being decreased, abated, or postponed for any reason. And they're not subject to any defense, set off, or recoupment that the institution may have against the authority, the trustee, or any other bondholder. In conclusion, the 2019 bonds are proposed to be sold in a negotiated sale pursuant to a bond purchase agreement with B of A Securities as the underwriter.
Sir, thank you. Thank you. Are there questions for Gerard, Duran, or Sarathi?
And it's for any and all of you. Should we expect more transactions with this, this kind of structure, with the backup structure? And why is this the first one we've seen in a long time?
We haven't seen it in a long time because it has sort of been out of the market. The rates, what was taking place, we used to have a very significant FHA portfolio.
Based on what was coming due, I yet noticed
Right.
that.
The program is a little bit, can't think of the term I'm looking for, weighty. There are, there's a mortgage reserve fund
Cumbersome
requirement.
and-
There's a number of requirements that can result in negative arbitrage. And what the resolution for some hospitals has been, it was to do taxable Ginnie Maes, which was a better transaction
right,
and a better cost of
right,
capital
right.
for them. So particularly this hospital issued taxable Ginnie Maes to exit our portfolio. So we're welcoming them back. The rates have basically flipped enough.
But if
where
the arbitrage now, maybe, is a little
Well,
bit different.
it's
maybe.
The bankers have it makes sense to do the transaction
Right,
at this
right,
stage of the
okay.
game, and they were analyzing even the taxable versus the tax exempt as presented at the meeting. So we had the flexibility to do whichever, and the interpretation is that the tax exempt is the best approach to
And
take.
might we expect more in the future?
I think it remains to be seen, Beryl. There are certain institutions that took advantage of the FHA program but have since left the FHA
Right.
program. They've gotten ratings on their own. They've been able to access the market on an enhanced basis. FHA was certainly a program that helped some of the more financially distressed hospitals. But sort of given the market dynamics and, sort of the rates, what rates look like in terms of tax exempt versus taxable, I think we have to see.
Again, I can also add one other thing. I was down in Washington at HUD yesterday and at a meeting about the hospital program. And they kind of, the way DASNY is recognized, it wants to move forward under its one DASNY initiative. They have their own kind of parallel type of an approach. They want to be more user-friendly to hospitals around the country. They recognize they have had very low volume for most of the last decade. Some of it was self-inflicted and some of it was just the deals didn't work.
Market
right.
circumstance.
But now that there's a more a better market for these types of transactions, they want to get out of their own way to the extent that they can. And I don't mean to use that terminology, that's not the terminology they use, but they want to be able to have people that are already in their portfolio have more loans and to actually have new people, new institutions come in, because that's their bread and butter.
No, good. It would be, if some other institutions that have a financial need for that kind of enhancement are able to take advantage of it, it's only to the benefit of New York, so, good.
This is Tracy. From the department's perspective, we can attest to the insatiable need for capital,
Right.
particularly not just among the financially distressed entities, but even just relatively stable entities that are just looking at remaining stable and needing capital to do that. So we've been working with DASNY and appreciate the efforts on a joint, collaborative to try to identify ideas to access the capital, and certainly encouraging to hear FHA is taking up efforts to streamline.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks for your question there. Are there other questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction? Beryl, thank you. Tracy, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. As there are none opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Sarafi,
Thank you.
Gerard?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gerard, thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the next transaction, I neglected to do something that is very important for me to do this morning, and that's to introduce the members and our guests to the two new fellows, two DASNY fellows who joined us this morning here in the board meeting. Alex Serdine, is that how you say it? Serdine. Thank you. And Maria Carrasco. Sitting in the corner. I happen to have their resumes in front of me. They are inspiring. We're fortunate to have them both. I hope that your experiences here are as just fabulous, as good as we can make them. And I look forward to seeing more of you in these meetings.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Sir, thank you. We should also highlight our inaugural class of fellows, Cassandra and Shota, have full-time jobs they were offered by Barclays and RBC. So the program has been very successful, and we continue to structure it in a way in which we are looking for very top-tier diverse talent and working with our partners to then take them on for the next 6 months and mentor them. I think we've learned a lot from last year. We now have even better insights into building a broader and deeper program for our fellows. So it's a very exciting opportunity for us and certainly them. Matt Bergen is, how should we say, he's the Dante. He takes them through the concepts of heaven and hell. It is important that they see the good, the bad, the indifferent, and Portia, as well as Craig Schriefel, are also very engaged. Certainly Portia has led this initiative. We are going to expose this team to our legal operation as well as our construction division. We're very excited, and finance, I should say. So we're very excited by this. Welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You, sir. Now we're going to go on to the single approval financing, sir, and that's on you.
Thank you. Behind tab 4 is the Northwell Health Obligated Group Single Approval Transaction Summary with Bond Counsel Allison Radecki of Orrick, Harrington, and Suffolk, and Michelle Hutchinson of Brown Hutchinson, presenting along with Matthew Burton.
Allison, Michelle, Matt, welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to, since it will be everybody, so.
Good morning, everyone. The Northwell Health Obligated Group financing is before the board today, and the staff report presents financing in amount not to exceed $250 million. The financing that you're considering this morning will finance various construction, renovation, and modernization projects for the members of the Northwell Health Obligated Group, as well as refund all or a portion of DASNY's North Shore Long Island Jewish Obligated Group Revenue Bonds, Series 2009E. As this is an obligated group structure, obligations issued under the master trust indenture will be a joint and several obligation of each member of the obligated group and will be secured by lien and certain gross receipts of the members of the obligated group. In addition, although no new mortgages will be granted, the Series 2019 bondholders will have the benefit of the existing mortgages as part of the initial security. It is anticipated that the mortgages will be eliminated once the consents of 51% of the holders of the master trust indenture obligations are received. In looking at the obligated group, they have consistently recorded over 100 days cash on hand and a cushion ratio in excess of 13.0 to 1. The obligated group's operating gain has averaged $214 million over the last 5 years, and total net patient service revenue has increased by $600 million from 2018 as compared to 2017. When we look at the system's inpatient market share is approximately 29%, which is twice that of its nearest competitor. The market share is for the system, which is slightly bigger than the obligated group. And I wanted to point that out as there are 4 hospitals in the system that are not part of the obligated group. To provide some context, As of December 31st, 2018, the members of the obligated group represented approximately 83% of the total operating revenues and 84% of the total assets of the system. As noted in the staff report, the obligated group can also transfer money to affiliates within the system as long as these transfers meet the limits that are established in the master trust indenture. As part of the proposed financing, the plan is to amortize the new money portion in the years 2031 to 2040 to provide for a more level aggregate debt service profile. The refunding is proposed to be structured with level savings without any extension of the maturities and is anticipated to provide a net present value benefit of approximately $5.2 million. And to conclude, the expected ratings are A3, A-, and A-. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Allison, Michelle, you all going to comment on the bond council later?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm Allison Radke, and I will give a brief overview of the transaction. Michelle Hutchinson of Brown Hutchinson, and then give an overview of the general resolution and the series resolution, and then I'll follow up with an overview of the MTI. So today you have before you for your consideration a general resolution, a series 2019A resolution, a series 2019B resolution, and a loan agreement. You're asked to adopt a new general resolution for this group because we've modernized the resolution a bit to take into account new DASNY policy, as well as to take into account the name changes in Northwell Health Obligated Group. It used to be North Shore, it's now Northwell. They've tweaked a couple of the names. So we're adopting a new general resolution for that reason. You're also being asked to approve not more than $250 million of bonds, all in between the two series in the aggregate. The proceeds of the bonds will be loaned to Northwell Healthcare Inc., who is serving as the borrower under the loan agreement and is also the obligated group representative. And there are currently 10 members of the obligated group. That's kind of switched a little bit as well. The Series 2019A bonds are expected to be issued as fixed-rate bonds. The proceeds will go to, as Ed had said, to redeem the DASNY Series 2009E bonds, as well as to pay certain costs of issuance. The Series 2019B bonds are expected to be issued as variable rate bonds, initially in a long-term interest rate period with a put. At the end of that initial long-term interest rate period, the bonds can be converted to another long-term interest rate period or to another variable rate. The proceeds of the Series 2019B bonds are expected to be used for various projects at certain of the members of the obligated group to fund a capitalized interest account, as well as to pay costs of issuance. Now, the bonds are special obligations of the authority, payable solely from the revenues, which consist of payments under the loan agreement, as well as payments under the obligation that's issued under the MTI by the members of the obligated group. The obligation is secured, as Matt previously said, by the gross receipts of all members of the obligated group, and as well as prior mortgages, and there are no new mortgages in connection with this financing. As an aside note, the Series 2019A bonds and the Series 2019B bonds are the 20th and 21st series of bonds issued by DASNY for the benefit of the members of the obligated group. And I'm going to turn it over to Michelle to touch briefly on the general resolution and the series resolution.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
As I'm sure you're aware, the general resolution is the basic agreement between the authority and the holders of the bonds issued under the general resolution. The general resolution allows for the issuance of a variety of series or multiple series of bonds, each of which are to be secured separately. Each series of bonds is separately secured by revenues, as defined in the general resolution, by an obligation under the master trust indenture, and by certain funds and accounts. The general resolution also sets forth the general terms for each of the series of bonds, the conditions for issuance, remedies, provisions for amendments to the general resolution, and other matters. The Series 2019A and the 2019B bonds will be the first and the second series of bonds issued under this general resolution. With respect to the series resolutions themselves, the series resolutions delegate to various officers of the authority the powers to do, among other things, set the principal amount of the Series 2019 bonds, which Allenson had stated in the aggregate are not to exceed $250 million. The dates on which the bonds will pay interest and principal and mature. The interest rates on the variable bonds, which will not exceed 7.5% if tax exempt, and if taxable, not to exceed 10%. Also, the purchase price of the 2019 bonds, redemption dates, etc. In addition, the series resolutions authorize the execution and delivery of the bond purchase agreement, the loan agreement, and approval of a draft preliminary official statement, as well as a final official statement.
Thank you. Are there questions for Allison, Michelle, or Matt? Tracy?
I just had one question, and then I was going to just offer, comments from the Department of Health on our memo. And the question is on the new money, on the variable rate on the new money. Is there any fixing? Is there any instrument to protect against interest rates rising, or I heard the not to exceed.
They have the option to issue in any mode. It can be a 3-year, 5-year, 7-year mode. It can be a longer mode. It can be VRDVs.
They can convert to fixed.
They can convert to
They have a
fixed,
lot of
right?
options.
They are assessing all their options
Okay.
right now.
Great, thank you.
And one other thing, I'm sorry, I left out, there's no debt service reserve fund requirement here.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle.
And that's in line with our guidelines.
That's correct.
Yes. Tracy, you want to offer some comments?
Yeah, so I'll just note for members of the Department of Health, in accordance with our procedures, did provide our memo in support of this financing. And, certainly I won't have to speak to the credit strength of Northwell and its essentiality as a system, one of the large systems in New York State and nationally. I do want to point out that our understanding of, and it's good to see Northwell returning, to DASNY. The reason it came is the fact that the refunding was able to be done on a current basis and is economic. I'll point out, in addition to the net present value debt service, the health department at the interest comparison, and that also has a net present value benefit of $2 million. With respect to the new money, we got comfortable with the structuring because it is a deferral of principal in the first 10 years, because it achieves an overall aggregate level debt service for the Northwell Health System, and that is consistent with our policies in terms of helping systems achieve overall aggregate level debt service. I will point out that all of the 21 projects that the new money will finance have CON approval. There's one that we're remaining to settle out the contingencies on, but they're all CON approved projects. We are aware and allowing that many of these projects will be qualifying for tax exempt financing, and as such, many of them have been will result in a disbursement at closing to reimburse Northwell, because many of these projects have been done first with equity. So, but that is a qualifying criteria for the tax exempt, and able to issue as a tax exempt basis. With all those factors, we are recommending our approval to the board for this resolution of $250 million.
Tracy, thank you. Are there any questions for Tracy?
Well, I had some questions for Matt.
All right, of course.
But maybe if there are other questions
Are
for
there
Tracy.
questions for Tracy, since we've just heard her supplemental presentation?
So Matt, you mentioned briefly about the obligated group. You said there are 4 institutions that are not part of it?
That's correct.
What's the background?
the system has grown over time, and on page 4, we talk about relatively recent additions in Westchester County, starting in 2015, Phelps Memorial Hospital of Sleepy Hollow and Northern Westchester Hospital of Mount Kisco. They joined the system strategically. They're moving into Westchester, or they moved into Westchester. In 2016, Peconic Bay Medical Center of Riverhead became a member of the system, and most recently in 2018, Mather Hospital of Port Jefferson became a member of the system. So again, they're in the system, but they are not in the obligated group.
Do they, in time, is the expectation they come into the obligated group, or the?
I have not heard that. That's always a possibility, but I have not heard that.
So one thing I noted is that the obligated group represents a larger percentage of the liabilities of the system than of the assets of the revenue, I think. Not significantly, but 5 to 10%. Is that a point of concern at all, or?
I don't view it as a concern. This is a highly rated system. It's incredibly integrated. They are very current in technology and best practices. It's really a really well-run institution, well-run system.
I would just make the observation with regard to that there are 3 very large tertiary care hospitals within the obligated group and the system, which are Lenox Hill, Long Island Beach, North Shore, and a vast portion of the debt has actually been taken on for improvements to those 3 facilities.
But this bond offering, the proceeds of this are not being used to renovate or do anything with Lenox Hill, correct?
That's correct.
That's
Other questions? There being none, may I ask, please, for your approval? Can we vote the resolution? Thank you very much, Tracy. Second? Gerard, thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye. 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 As there are none opposed, the resolution passes unanimously. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Behind tab 5 is NYU Langone Hospital's transaction with Portia Lee presenting.
Thank you very much. Behind tab 5 is health financing on behalf of NYU Langone Hospital in an amount not to exceed $13,213,250. As you know, it's the policy of Public Authorities Control Board that health financings that exceed $10 million within a 12-month period be brought before both KCB and this board for approval. There's an attached equipment list which outlines various types of equipment for NYU Langone Hospital's IT department. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Portia. Are there questions for Portia? Hearing none. Can I have the motion, please, to approve the resolution? Wellington, thank you. Is there a second? Paul, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye. 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 As there are none opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for being here. Take care. We're now going to move to the report of the president, and with your permission, we'll go directly into an executive session. May I have a motion, please, for an executive session to discuss the financial and credit history of particular corporations, proposed pending or current litigation, and the employment history of particular persons or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of particular persons. May I have that motion? Beryl, thank you. Wellington, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye. 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 Motion carries unanimously.
You can't actually cancel as opposed to.
Thank you. The record will indicate that we have just left an executive session during which no decisions were made other than to return to the public session. The board has before it a resolution having to do with the leased premises in Manhattan. Mike's going to give a brief description of it, and then I'm open the floor for any discussion and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The resolution that's before the board for consideration authorizes staff on qualified conditions to go forward with the negotiation of a real property lease for office space here in New York City within New York County or Manhattan. This resolution, for information purposes for the board, tracks the same resolution and approach that the board took the last time we negotiated our lease in 2007, with modifications to establish a committee of board members designated by the chair, who shall have and are delegated the power and the authority to approve the transaction after review with the president and any other staff officer designated by the president. With those comments, I think that's what we have to say. It will be presented when done back to the boards. The board knows where the committee and staff came out.
Outstanding, outstanding. Are there questions about the resolution? You all have had a chance now to review the revised resolution. There being none, may I have a motion, please, to approve it? Wellington, thank you. Is there a second? Paul, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. The board should be aware that I have asked, of course, I require your consent at some point, verbally, please. I've asked Jerry Romsky to chair this committee. As I have said, both on and off the record, Romsky is either our real estate expert or as close to a real estate expert as
Close as you can find.
And with the board's permission, what I'd like to do is to discuss with Jerry the membership of the committee, such that you'll probably get a note from DASNY indicating the folk who comprise that committee, if that's acceptable to you. Okay. Before we go on with Portia's discussion, Larry, do you have anything that you would like to report to us?
Not at this time.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Do you want to?
We're doing a quick executive session for that.
Portia, then why don't you go ahead? I'm sorry. We've not done the president's report. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry.
No problem. So, thank you. Try to move through this very quickly. Governor Cuomo has called this a very productive session. End of session, there are 4 pieces of legislation directly applicable to DASNY that were passed in the 2019 session. First, the State's Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise Program, Article 15A, which supports the participation of MWBEs in state contracts, was reauthorized and expanded. Second, DASNY was authorized to establish a pilot program to expand contracting opportunities for small businesses and MWBEs. The bill authorizes DASNY to create targeted competitive procurement opportunities to increase participation by small businesses and MWBEs in DASNY's work. Through these opportunities and mentor-protege relationships, the program seeks to expand the pool of small contractors and subcontractors ready to perform larger jobs. DASNY will select the procurements to include in the program. This program is authorized until July 1st, 2023. The total annual value of contracts that DASNY may award under the program may not exceed the greater of $20 million or 5% of the value of all DASNY construction contracts awarded in a given fiscal year. Third, legislation was passed that authorizes DASNY to provide financing to the Reese School of Manhattan. The not-for-profit Reese School provides special education services. The amount of financing is not to exceed $31 million. Excuse me. The financing will enable the Reese School to update and expand its facilities. Finally, the legislature appropriated new capital funding for 3 grant programs administered by DASNY. $30 million was appropriated for the Higher Education Capital Matching Grant Program. The HECAP program awards matching capital grants to independent, not-for-profit colleges for the design, acquisition, construction, reconstruction, rehabilitation, or equipping of a facility on or near a college campus in New York. $385 million was appropriated for the state and municipal facilities program. The SAM program provides capital dollars to government and not-for-profit entities across New York, including municipalities, school and fire districts, colleges, and libraries. Finally, $100 million was appropriated to the New York City Housing Authority. The funding is designated for capital projects and other improvements to address issues including, but not limited to, lead at housing developments owned or operated by NYCHA. The funding will be allocated as stated in a plan approved by the New York State Director of the Budget in consultation with the Chair of NYCHA and with DASNY. Last week, on behalf of DASNY and the state, Larry Bolt, Ricardo Salaman, and I met with One Brooklyn Health Systems Finance Committee. We explained who we are, what we do, as well as provided background regarding the important connection DASNY and One Brooklyn Health share through the governor's $1.4 billion Vital Brooklyn initiative. As you know, Vital Brooklyn is designed to reverse the chronic social, economic, and health disparities in central Brooklyn and improve the lives of the New Yorkers who live in communities that have been neglected for far too long. We're clearly working with the Department of Health as well, collaboratively. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, if not, up to you. In terms of our partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. The partnership has been there from the inception of creating a plan to develop not only a healthcare institution, but the health and wellness that the Central Brooklyn residents need through the Vital Brooklyn Initiative. So we appreciate that collaborative in every way.
Thank you, Tracy. DASNY is also evaluating several potential spaces in Manhattan for a New York City office. The rental market is dynamic and negotiations are ongoing. We again finished as one of the top issuers in the first half of 2019. And I will turn it over to Portia to give us a market update.
Thank you, Gerard. Behind the tab are the standard public finance reports. I would just note that in the last board meeting, we priced to close the competitive fit transaction. JP Morgan, RBC, Jefferies, Citi, and Morgan Stanley won each of the 5 tranches. Brief market update. Total new issue supply is currently about 178 billion year to date. That's 1.9% higher than supply levels this time last year. Total supply for this week is expected to be about 8 billion. U.S. Treasury prices declined yesterday as a result of stronger than expected economic data. Top-rated municipal bonds were slightly weaker on the curve, with the 30-year MMD up 1 basis point. Having said that, overall municipal bond flows, bond funds have reported inflows of $1 billion for the week ending July 10th. This marks the 27th consecutive week of inflows into the market. You know, again, it's been a very, very good time to issue bonds. 1, 10, and 30-year MMD have decreased again since the last board meeting. They've decreased 17, 8, and 5 basis points respectively since the last board meeting. The other thing that I would note is we continue our One DASNY outreach efforts. We will be meeting with Siena College next week, and we will keep you updated as to that meeting and others that we put on the calendar.
Good luck with that. Thank you. With the board's permission, I'd like to have a second executive session, a very brief one, to give Larry Volk an opportunity to report. May I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss the financial and credit history of particular corporations, proposed pending or current litigation, and the employment history of particular persons or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of particular persons? May I have a motion? Thank you very much, Joe. Is there a second? All, thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. We're in executive session. Uh, The next agenda item is the construction project.
I'll just highlight one more thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't realize.
It's also important that we have received expressions of interest for our largest project, the Life Sciences Lab project. 2 design-build teams have submitted expressions of interest for the $750 million project to build a world-class New York State Life Sciences Public Health Laboratory in Albany. Of course, we're partnering with the Department of Health on this. The teams were Gilbane Building Company / Turner Construction and Tudor Perini Corporation / O&G Industries. DASNY has issued a request for proposals to the 2 teams. The firms will have until November the 6th to submit their proposals and bids. The final issue is Governor Cuomo has put together a task force in which he has asked me to be part of as a representative of DASNY. So we have been named to the Lake Ontario Resiliency and Economic Development Initiative Commission, READY. So on June 10th, I stood alongside Governor Cuomo as he announced that up to $300 million in funding will be available to impacted communities. Representatives from DASNY in Western New York, in particular, our head of Western New York, Rob Ryan, is taking the lead on this initiative. We are supporting the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. We have visited affected areas where recovery projects potentially could be implemented and participated in meetings where they will develop recommendations on how to improve infrastructure along the waterfront. This is a very huge project in Western New York, and we're certainly proud to be part of this.
May I just make an observation?
Please.
This is big in Western New York, but it's a monstrous problem.
Monstrous
issue in eastern St. Lawrence River. And it's going to persist for the next 3 to 5 years because the Great Lakes are at record levels of water. And there's only one place for it to go. It's over the Niagara River, out Lake Ontario, and down the St. Lawrence River.
Okay.
So it is critical, in my observation, it's critical that this group, which is first piece of forethought that's been given by the state to this issue, other than political posture, that this, the net result of this is we have to build a more reliant infrastructure for the towns and villages that should. This is not, should not be a bailout program for somebody who built their house too close to the water.
Okay.
And a marina that was built in a swamp shouldn't be saved. It's a critical thing. I know that you've got a compatriot, Bill Quinones, is on the commission as well. And it's very important that this be built. It's a great initiative on the part of the state, but it needs to be managed. The key word is smart.
It sounds like this is an initiative that will need in order to be fully successful, we'll need inputs from people like you and others who are thinking about how this money is going to be spent, where it's going to be spent.
I'm not an engineer. I have the vaguest idea. I just know what shouldn't be spent.
I hear you.
Politics.
Okay.
Well, we are collaborating with the community. We're bringing expertise in. Department of Environmental Protection is really the lead entity. We recognize exactly what you have said and are trying to find the palliatives that front, middle, and back. That's an engineering issue, and we're hugely sensitive to the first issue that you highlighted. Look, we're looking for a remedy, not a bailout.
There's not a remedy to high water. There's a remedy to dealing with high water.
That's what I'm talking about.
There is no remedy to high water. That's nature.
No,
And
we're talking about is
global warming and everything
responding,
else is.
right? What we're talking about is resiliency, right? In terms of making sure that we can support these communities, all right, as they deal with these natural catastrophes.
And it's a very good example to look at how resilience has been built over the years, and that's on the north shore of Lake Ontario and the north shore of the St. Lawrence River, where this high water is the same as it is on the south shore. It's not bothering the Canadians one bit, because they've lived there for hundreds of years, and they've dealt with it in the past. They've got resilience. So there are a lot of life lessons of what they did in Canada.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Are there questions for Gerard? Hearing none, I think we're going to move to the construction projects. Steve?
Thank you. Behind tab 8 are the 3 standard construction division reports. On the cover of the construction projects report are 2 photos of the Lehman College bookstore relocation project. The scope of this project was the renovation of the west wing of the Lehman College old gym building. 3 classrooms were gutted, creating 1 larger space to house the bookstore. In addition to the open floor plan, we constructed a mezzanine level to house the bookstore's staff offices and other miscellaneous spaces, and an elevator was added, allowing for vertical transportation between the basement, first floor, and the mezzanine levels. Got some pics if you want to have a look. The project budget was $4.6 million. The design consultant was Icon 5 Architects out of New York City. Design start was December of 2015. Design completed in May of 2016. The general contractor was Rochelle Construction. Construction started in June of 17 and completed in March of 19. A couple of features of the project. This was a former gymnasium with a spiced oak flooring. Dating back to 1929, we restored the floor to its really original condition. In addition, a new entry was designed and constructed, which was challenging for the architect, who was tasked with incorporating a new glass storefront compatible with the 1929 stone facade building construction. On page 3 of the construction projects report, 3 new projects were added into DASNY's portfolio. First off is SUNY Cortland. This is the renovation of 2 towers, 2-tower res halls, Smith and Casey. We'll begin construction on these in December of this year. The total project cost is $30.2 million. At UAlbany, we're doing some interiors work on a few of the residence halls, worth $7.9 million. And at Oneonta, the Ford Hall Zero Net Carbon Ready project was added in at $23.1 million. That project will begin construction in May of next year. On page 11 are the construction expenditures to date. Prior year to date through May of 2018, we expended $109.1 million. Current year to date, we're at $109.7 million, so fairly flat year over year. On the program and project update, I'll start with SUNY. We are now beyond the 2/3 calendar schedule mark for our 34 summer projects. We have less than 30 days remaining in our schedule to complete this work. The projects are progressing fairly well toward an August 15th plus or minus substantial completion date, which will be in time for fall 2019 occupancy on multiple campuses across the state. We're also working to complete 4 capital projects at SUNY Alfred, UAlbany, Buffalo State, and Plattsburgh. These projects all started back in May of 2018, and they're advancing towards substantial completion later this month or early next month. We anticipate all 4 projects will complete in time for occupancy for the fall 2019 semester. There is a wellness center that's part of the UAlbany project that will complete in early November of this year. And lastly, there were 3 new project starts that kicked off this past May. Oneonta's $20 million Huntington Hall renovation, Plattsburgh's $16.6 million Kent Hall renovation, and SUNY Poly's $33.5 new build, zero net energy ready residence hall. As I noted, we'll begin construction at Cortland's Smith Casey project and Oswego's Fennell Hall renovation in December of this year. All 5 of those projects are scheduled to complete in August of 2020, along with Phase 2B of SUNY Alfred's Mackenzie Hall renovation. At South Beach, I attended an owners meeting on July 11th, last Thursday, that included representatives from OMH, our construction manager, TDX, our general contractor, and our design professional to review the status of the project. The anticipated substantial completion date remains October 4th of this year. We toured the project and met afterwards to discuss open issues. There's a large amount of work to be completed over the final 3 months. Manpower is beyond 300 at this time, with the GC looking to procure even more. The group is working together in unison to try to land this project by the milestone date. Regardless, there is a lot of work remaining on the project. At FIT, the new academic building project is now in redesign, full redesign, with construction packages set to be advertised for bid in early 2020. DASNY is also working toward the takeover of the architect's contract from FIT, who originally held and procured that contract for the balance of the project. On the NYCHA front, we continue with the 3 programs. The security program, still at 76 of 78 projects complete. On the appliance side, 36 of 42 developments are complete. 2 additional developments will be completed by the end of this month. And on the quality of life portfolio, there's 52 projects, 13 are in design, 5 are in procurement, 14 are in construction, and 20 projects are substantially complete. On the Gozer side, we have 46 projects at $105 million. 27 remain in design, 14 are in procurement, 2 are in construction, and 3 are substantially complete. There were 37 additional projects that came to DASNY. One of those projects is in design that will be transferred for construction to the municipality that the project is housed in. 8 of the projects were design only, and all 8 of those are complete by DASNY, and 28 projects were canceled following feasibility studies. And lastly, just a couple of other items. DASNY presented yesterday at the SUNY Physical Plant Administrators Association Summer Conference meeting. We had a presentation that focused on the SUNY Poly and SUNY Oneonta zero net energy and zero net carbon projects. On July 30th, we will be presenting at the CUNY MWVE conference along with Gerard. We have our first PLA session with the New York City BCTC tomorrow to talk about our next PLA. And lastly, we're negotiating with a software vendor for replacement of our project management system, and we anticipate implementation to begin in September. That concludes my report.
Question? I have one. The NYCHA security project, you said you're substantially finished.
76 of 78 projects are done.
Expect.
The last 2 are in construction. One of them was rather large. I don't know the exact completion dates, but
I only asked Steve because it has to do with security, and I'm just just curious.
Yep, we've got a lot of cameras at a lot of places.
Okay, outstanding.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much life left in those projects, so we're getting close to the end.
Thank you. Thanks very much. We'll move to the general counsel's report. Sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing further to report.
Well, that's a great report. Thank you very much, Mike. And then finally, the finance report. Kim, are you going to stand on what you submitted, or do you have things to add?
I have a couple of things to add.
Please.
Quick summary for the first quarter of the fiscal year. We've had 5 private financing closings that generated $800,000 of revenue thus far in the year. Our direct charges to public clients have been at 95% versus the budget of 94%. And year to date, we're about $800,000 below our budgeted level. On the operations front, we've issued an RFQ. We're looking for a system that will help us more comprehensively track our bond issuances from initial client contact through issuance, through administration, and ultimately through maturity. Looking for something that's going to allow us to streamline our operations and have a more collaborative environment internally. We currently use Excel extensively, as well as some in-house developed applications, so we want to consolidate those into one system.
So the system would permit you to know, whenever you go into it, precisely where an issuance, where the financing is, or just
Yes,
the entire?
that's what we're looking for on the front end. So wherever it is in an approval process up through closing, and then post-closing, what's outstanding, what upcoming payments are due to bondholders, and should be able to help support the year-end closing as well.
And it will give you a lot more information, apparently, than you are able to take out of the system now.
More information and much more efficiently. We get all the information that we need, but it's not always easy to do so.
Sure. Thank you, and good luck with that.
Thank you. We also started yesterday a series of 8 meetings with some banks. We're trying to identify some best practices and things that the banks are seeing in the industry in terms of payments and other things we might be able to do to help both our internal and our external clients to be able to streamline our processes.
Okay. Thank you. Paul, is there anything you'd like to?
No, just very happy to be here. Thank you.
It's good to have you here. Thank you. Is there any other business then to come before this board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to adjourn the meeting? Carol, thank you. Paul, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. John, thank you for joining in.